HP5 and Rodinal is a pretty interesting combination, and these two together have gotten a pretty bad rap over the years. I mean, you're gonna get wormy golf ball sized grain and blocked up shadows for sure, right? But maybe this is all just misinformation. I mean, who am I to really judge or go against the grain? You see what I did there? So I really did want to see what kind of images this film and developer could produce. So I did a deep dive to find out what this combo actually has to offer, and by the end of this video, you should know if this is a good fit for you. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I will also show you how this combo prints in the darkroom as well. So I've heard that Rodinal, or maybe it's produced Rodinal, is kind of to the UK what HC110 is to the US. And I'm not sure how much truth there is to that, but I definitely see where that idea kind of came from. So the first thing I did was make a real quick test to kind of examine and see what the overall film curve would look like. Then I just went out and shot some more urban random images in my city. So shooting 35mm with the intention of having grainier, kind of grittier, more contrasty images gave me kind of a fresh perspective shooting things around my city with 35mm, much in the same way when I have my Holga. It gives me a new creative outlet or way of looking at things. A new sort of excitement, I'd say. So Green Bay is a fairly small city, all things considered, but when you start isolating and going kind of into the nooks and crannies and exploring the shadows and the lights and reflections and different things, you can really come up with some magical images, and I would say just about anywhere or any city with an urban kind of look. Even if nothing turns out, it's always really good creative practice to go and shoot and see what's around. Okay, now I normally don't do a full-on film curve plot for 35mm, but I did think you would find this interesting. So for this roll, I did shoot it at box speed, and you can see here my shadows definitely were underdeveloped a little bit. You can also see that Rodinal does give you a really pretty straight portion of the film, like a straight curve, and this leads to really even tones. I developed this at 11 minutes, 20 degrees Celsius, and you can see too, so my target for development was up here, and my target for exposure was down here. So my negatives overall were underexposed and underdeveloped. In my defense, I was using some pretty old Rodinal. In fact, I ordered some new stuff immediately after I saw this. I don't know if this is what caused it, but this was kind of the recommended time that I found online. And it was 1 to 50 too. Anyway, I did shoot another test at ISO 200. Now this is using that same developer, and it did bring my densities up to my target here. So just the exposure alone would have brought my curve to look something like this. This would have given me proper exposure, but my development still would have been short of my target here. So with that same developer anyway, I would expose for 200 and then develop it to hit this target here. So I'd give it about 15% development, and then it would go something like that. And another thing to mention is I did use a rotary processor, and I think that's why it has a little bit of this upswept curve, because Rodinal's not known for this. And in fact, I have read quite a bit in the fact that you can actually give this quite a shoulder through development. So if you do more of a stand or semi-stand agitation, you can shoulder that off to get more manageable highlights if you need to. But anyway, this is the overall film curve that I got. Even though it's a little underexposed and underdeveloped, the curve's not going to change a whole lot. Development's going to make it a little bit steeper. So the negatives are definitely not ideal, but still worth digging deeper into looking at them, scanning them, and printing them. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, do me a quick favor, smash that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss future videos. Okay, so enough with the testing and the charts. What I'm really interested in, how do they scan? How do they print? What does the grain and sharpness look like? So there is some debate on whether or not scanning can make your grain look kind of that mushy and maybe even what they were talking about, that wormy look. And I think this really just depends on the quality of the scans. Now for 35 millimeter, I personally get the crispest grain and best scans from using a digital camera scan setup. And for these, I used my Canon R5 with 100 macro, the EF 100 millimeter macro lens. I converted these using Negative Lab Pro in Lightroom, and I do apply the lab sharpening in Negative Lab Pro. And as you can see in these scans, the grain is really crisp and sharp, and the overall images are very sharp for 35 millimeter. I'm very happy with how most of these turned out, especially being a little underexposed and underdeveloped. I felt they scanned really well, but now I want to do the real test. For me anyway, I want to see how these print and how the grain and sharpness and contrast looks on a darkroom print. For me, a fiber-based print is just going to be the ultimate benchmark test. So the first thing that you're going to notice in this contact sheet is that the images are a little bit lower contrast. Now here is where the power of darkroom printing is going to come into play, as a whole nother level of creativity is opened up as I can increase the contrast, bring up the shadows where I can, and bring down the highlights where I need to, and still get that gritty, grainy final print. It's like I can still get that high contrast kind of pushed look if I want to. So I really found printing this combination of HP5 and Rodinal really fun and just enjoyable in the darkroom. And I really think once I get my negatives dialed in even better, it's just gonna be that much more incredible. And the cool part is even if you get some like dust and scratches in your images, like for the right picture, it can actually look like it belongs there and look kind of cool, like if it doesn't drive you absolutely bonkers and insane. And lastly, spotting these grainy gems is definitely much easier. So I think the misunderstanding of HP5 and Rodinal really stems from kind of like pre-digital cameras. When I was learning photography and learning film, we didn't have digital cameras that could take high-res images, you know, super fine, like no grain, and just sharpness beyond belief. We didn't have that, and we certainly didn't have phones that could do that. So a good portion of what we tried to do was get really fine grain, sharp, high resolution images on film. And that was kind of always the goal. That's what I remember anyway. Now we did have photojournalists and artists and other people that needed higher speed film, and by nature their images would just be grainier. And this did kind of start producing this whole aesthetic and look. And it became sought after, and it's a really cool look, and especially for the right subject and images, I absolutely love it. I think the higher contrast grit in the grain is something that it's just, I feel like the creative possibilities there, it's just a whole nother outlet. Like, it's a creative choice and it's a very powerful one. So if you are into grittier, higher contrast, just punchier images like that in general, this may be a really good combination for you to explore and try out. Now, on the other hand, if you're looking for the finest detail, really high resolution and fine grain, this probably isn't the best option for you. There's way better combinations out there. And if you enjoyed this video, definitely check out the one I made on comparing grain from HC110 developer and Rodinal. I think you'll love that one, and you can check it out right here.